Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Vince.
Life is like a hurricane, Kia.
Thank you. We've got Chris.
I'm the third assistant to the assistant.
And I'm Kia. Hello, everybody. We are Some of My Friends Read Comics. We're having a good time. Today, we are going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart and something I'd never read before. We're going to read some old Donald Duck comics. Man, I guess why? We should probably say why.
We're going to solve a mystery and rewrite history.
Yeah, exactly. Man, DuckTales. We all loved DuckTales when we were little, of course. Man, I had so many DuckTales coloring books. It was amazing. Number one super fan right here. I think I wrote that in one of my coloring books. Anyways, Donald Duck has been a big deal for a lot longer than I have been his number one super fan. And most of that stems from the 1940s comics that were written starring him by a guy named Carl Barks, who is kind of like a comic book legend at this point. Vince, I know you've read a lot more about him. Do you want to talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, and Chris can probably fill in the blanks too. So Carl Barks wrote in anonymity for Donald Duck comics in the 40s and beyond that. He passed away at 99 in the year 2000. He was one of the first three inductees into the Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame. But he wrote in anonymity these Donald Duck comics, and people across the world, and especially in Europe really liked Donald Duck comics. They were like, one writer is really good for Donald Duck, and they just called him the Good Duck Writer. And they didn't know who he was, but they could sense a pattern. Like, his books were particularly good. And it's probably through his art style, because he both wrote and drew these books. But Carl Barks kind of drew up a legend, even though he didn't know he was popular, but people referred to him as the Good Duck Artist because they didn't know his real name. And this particular story we're reading, Lost in the Andes, is considered, I believe, his personal favorite, and also one of just the best emblematic stories of Donald Duck comics. I don't know why Donald Duck comics are so important, but Carl Barks created Duckburg. I don't think he created Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but he created a lot of the things like the Beagle Boys and other things we know in
Duckburg. He created Uncle Scrooge.
Uncle Scrooge, yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't
That's
realize.
his big one, I think. Yeah.
And Uncle Scrooge isn't in this book, but it is Donald with Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I mean, he just basically, everything that you like about DuckTales, he really created. And actually, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg really loved him, and the whole Indiana Jones running from the big rock ball at the beginning.
Oh, the boulder, yeah.
That comes from a Donald Duck comic from the 50s.
Which is crazy how often that thing gets referenced. Oh, man.
So that thing was Spielberg and Lucas being like, wasn't that Donald Duck comic from the 50s awesome? Let's put that in our movie, which is fucking bonkers. But every time I read about people talk about I think several comic sites, when they always talk about the best comics of all time, they always reference Carl Barks's run or the follow-up run, kind of Don Rosa's Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, which were
that's probably the other kind of big famous Duck story comic book that you may have heard of. Very heavily influenced by the Carl Barks stuff,
and so
right. Which is really good, but it's also really confusing as an American who hasn't read a million of these books, because Don Rosa's comic is all about fitting continuity together for 25 years of just standalone 25-page comics that are just silly fun. But he's oh, it's all an interwoven tapestry, which is kind of insane, but it's good.
So this book we're reading.
Yeah, they're all crazy. They're all just fucking adventures. Go on a quest, find this fabled artifact, find some legend, fight off some monster. And it's just silly, stupid fun that moves very, very quickly. It's DuckTales, yeah. It's great.
I remember having Uncle Scrooge books, and I don't know where they came from, but I remember they were going to this place called Wrong Way, and then they got off track, and they're we're going the wrong way to Wrong Way. And I remember that from when I was 3. That's
probably a reprint of a Carl Barks comic, but
right.
We don't have that one.
Or some adaptation, kids' book adaptation of a Carl Barks comic.
Right.
But
yeah, and he wrote hundreds of these stories, hundreds and hundreds of them. We'll talk about, some of the scenarios and stuff a little bit later. But yeah, we just picked this one because it's kind of well known as being his best. It seems to be referenced very often in other stories, but we'll just yeah.
Did you guys get a chance to read the one about the castle?
I did.
That one's really good too.
Yeah, where they have to spend a night or something in some old that was owned by the McDuck family, but they need to find this treasure, but there's also a ghost that they're fighting, and it's all crazy, and Donald Duck is an asshole. Basically, Donald Duck is kind of always a bit of an asshole. He's just mean to everybody. I don't know why. He's a very cranky guy. Yeah, he does sound like a cranky jerk.
And that's what's weird about these books is Donald Duck talks and doesn't have the voice.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it's hard for him to be I guess not hard for him, but when he's a main character in like an animated cartoon, you just don't hear his voice as often because you can barely understand him.
He does. He does have on the first page of Lost in the Andes. He does go, "Oh boy."
You can't. I don't know what I was going to say. I was going to talk about something that's not important. Let's just jump right into the story. How does that sound? Let's do it.
Okay.
So, Lost in the Andes. Okay. I don't know what voice that was. Lost in the Andes.
Gosh, that sounds like a good idea.
Well, let's just do the whole podcast in goofy voice.
Yup.
No, we're not doing that. That'd be terrible. Lost in the Andes. Let's jump right into it. It starts with Donald Duck. He has a job working at a museum, and he's the fourth janitor, the fourth assistant janitor, and the third assistant janitor is ordering him to dust the stones. And he drops one, like a very cube-shaped one, and it's an egg. And this is what I love about this comic. Just hits the ground running, because a lot of other comics, I'm like, all right, he's going to have to, like, go tell people, and this is going to be a whole thing, like, oh, who believes him? No, instantly, next panel, his discovery has startled the scientific world. I love it. Everyone's talking about this thing. We get a great montage going around. Everybody wants these eggs.
It's so weird. It's so mundane. Like, who would care about square eggs? But, like, the egg companies are like, man, we can pack eggs, like, so well if they're not round like this. And then, like, scientists are like, this is a fascinating discovery. And it's just, like, it's so weird that, like, everybody's on board with, like, we need to find more square eggs. Which is completely dumb.
But it makes it so fun. It just moves so much faster. And so instantly, like, an expedition is mounted. They're going to wherever these eggs came from.
We have to build a better mousetrap.
Kia's like, we've already decided this, and we're on an expedition. We're 2 pages into the story, guys. Buckle up.
Yeah, page 2. The ship is sailing.
Yeah, they're on an expedition to Peru. It was an old Incan civilization that they found these artifacts from, and they lost all the old records that they had on that collection were burned down in the Chicago fire. So they didn't have any records on this thing. So they're going to
So the Chicago fire is canonical within the Mickey Mouse universe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which I wonder where Duckburg is in relation to. But, whatever. That's all right.
I think it's in the Midwest somewhere. That's how I picture it.
That sounds right.
It's not
maybe like where Cincinnati is.
Cincinnati would make a good Duckburg, I think. Yeah, it sounds like a city where ducks live.
There's a lot of rivers.
I don't know. Yeah, ducks would like that. Ducks like rivers. But you know what's weird to me is that animals that aren't ducks live in Duckburg.
Racist.
Well, okay, I guess that's fair. I
have this whole treatise on like it plays out in DuckTales, but every single like bad guy, criminal, or like person in a service position is a dog, and every like well-to-do like respected person is a duck.
Oh boy!
Not in this comic.
Not in this comic.
Yeah, that's true. Because in this one, they're back on the ship, and guess who's the fourth assistant to the professor? It's Donald Duck again. And he asks his first assistant for an omelet. First assistant asks the second assistant to make the omelet. Second assistant asks the third assistant to make the omelet. And the third assistant tells Donald Duck to make the omelet. And of course, Donald Duck tells our surprise fourth, fifth, and sixth assistant it's Huey, Dewey, and Louie. They're on the ship. Woo! Hanging out, having a good time, blowing bubbles. like crazy.
Bubblegum. They love their bubblegum. These ducks love their
bubblegum. And they are tasked to make this omelet for the professor. And the only eggs that they can find, guess what, are the square eggs, which they use. And Donald tastes it, and he says, "Oh, very odd flavor, but maybe the professor will like it." Gives it to the third assistant. Third assistant hates it, but maybe the professor will like it. Second assistant also hates it, but maybe the professor will like it. Eventually moves its way up, and the next day the whole crew is sick. They've all turned green because of these 1,000-year-old eggs. Which, I'm a little worried about the science here. Would 1,000-year-old eggs even be cookable at all? Would they even break open? I don't know.
I have a problem with that. Well, obviously they got sick and everybody's sick from this thing. I have a bigger problem with ducks eating chicken eggs.
Oh, that's a bad idea. Yeah, I have another problem too. Is that why didn't Donald get sick? Because everyone else got sick and he seems to be okay. But you're right. The cannibalism is probably worse.
It's not cannibalism, but it's. I guess it's like eating monkey or ape. If we ate gorilla.
Ugh. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Like gorilla newborns. I don't know about that.
Well, gorilla eggs. You can just say gorilla eggs. Yeah, weird.
I'm sure there would be a delicacy if gorilla eggs existed. Anyways, we're on like page 5. Everybody's sick.
So Donald has to lead this expedition. They go out and they're like climbing up this mountain. Not really climbing. They're kind of like on a trail. There's a lot of villages on the way. They keep meeting a lot of locals. There's this great sort of series of events where nobody knows where these eggs are. But eventually they talk to a local who's like, "Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Square eggs. They look like stones. Next village over." And by the time they get to the next village, everybody is selling square eggs. And so they load up on them. They spend all their money on square eggs, which turn out to be, of course, bunk. But it's one of those fun examples of, the locals, to use a phrase, just kind of like fucking with the white people, even though they're ducks. They are white ducks, but they're fucking with the white ducks, selling them a bunch of bunk. Poor guys. And now the damn llama is blowing bubbles. The kids are blowing bubbles. When will these kids stop blowing bubbles? They never will.
I like it though.
Now,
I can't tell. Like all the characters have accents that are very much like Slowpoke Rodriguez.
Oh yeah.
Like Speedy Gonzales knows everybody, sister, kind of written like
very spelled out.
Yeah, I mean this is 1948. I will admit that.
It's not terrible though. Like even for back then, it's not very like. I don't know. It's.
I mean, and they're putting one over on our protagonists. Like they're the smarter ones, so.
Right.
It's not especially problematic.
It's just an accent, and there's a lot of just gags. Like I like the gag where the guy is he's got little wings on, and he's just gonna jump off a cliff, and Donald's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, like everybody says I'm the goofiest guy in town," and Donald's like, "Well, look, I'm trying to find these square eggs," and he's like, well, "Hey, everybody." There's a new idiot in this village.
Oh, that's right, the new idiot. I like that. He's the new idiot.
And then
they're getting ready.
And Donald says, "A human at last," when he finally meets somebody, which means there's humans in this world also. Now I'm really confused.
True, they are like those dog-looking people, but you're right. They, I guess he does call them humans. Very strange.
He does have like a dog nose, so I don't know. Maybe the writer and the artist didn't get in contact, even though they're the same person.
That could be it. So they are kind of in low spirits. They're getting ready to give up. They're hungry, and they've made camp, and there's this big fog, and they're stumbling around through the fog, and they end up falling through some wall. And they end up in this ancient underground civilization, which, has been lost to time. And they go down there and stop talking to everybody, and everything is square down here. And everybody has southern accents for some reason. Oh, it's because, all right, so they meet this ancient civilization where the square eggs came from. And it's, the the first explorer to come down here, like years and years ago, who brought back these ancient eggs. He is where they learned English from, and he had a southern accent, and so everyone is like walking around whistling Dixie, singing. It's a strange little gag.
So I have a question and also an observation.
Yeah.
I've heard the term "whistling Dixie." I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I know what Dixie sounds like. Which maybe means that I live in a bubble.
Jazz. It's like Dixieland jazz, right?
I don't know.
No?
I just feel like maybe I live in a bubble because I don't know what Dixie sounds like. And then also I was watching Frisky Dingo a couple nights ago. And according to the closed captioning, Killface's ringtone is Dixie. And that's why he's always trying to change it to Cat Party. Because he doesn't want Dixie to be his ringtone. Is that
I was
weird?
gonna say I thought it was a song.
No, he wants to get
is
it
it
to
that
be
one song? Is it that
Cat
specific song?
Party.
No, it's not Cat Party. But
No.
Dixie is like like that, isn't that or something like that?
That's what his ringtone is.
Just watch enough, University of Southern Mississippi football games. I'm pretty sure it's their fight song.
Oh, there we go.
I might be wrong.
That's a tall order for me to watch football, and then on top of that, University of South Mississippi.
Anybody out there who's listening to a Donald Duck podcast but is also a super fan of USM football,
We've got you covered. So they're in this square civilization, and they're treated like guests because they really liked that last explorer who came in and taught them English, and so they're treated to a meal. First, there's poached eggs, which are square-shaped, of course. There's scrambled eggs that are in a little cube. There's boiled eggs, also in a little cube. And then, later they're hanging out. They're hungry again. But all there is to eat is just eggs? And then I go, what about chickens? You don't have any chickens? Like,
Again, Donald Duck's trying to eat chickens.
or a hamburger.
Yeah, or so, like, he's asking about anything.
With Clarabelle Cow.
Listen, at this point, he's just curious about the chickens, and he's getting mad. He yells out, "Are
they really friends?"
That's true.
He's an acquaintance of Clarabelle Cow.
The cook is sitting there going, "What is chickens?" And Donald is yelling, "Chickens is the guys that lays these eggs," and they're mad, and so they go looking for where these eggs are coming from, and every morning. People just go to this valley and they pick up the eggs. There's just a bunch of eggs waiting for them, which I kind of call bullshit on. Like, why have these people not bothered to explore where these eggs come from? But they're
Well,
they're
why would they?
That's true. Why mess with a good thing, right?
Yeah, if you just walked into a valley every day and there was just food for you, you wouldn't be like, "But where is it coming from?"
That's true.
You would just look to the sky and say, "Thank you, sky."
Thank you, Sky. Yeah, that makes sense. Plus, okay, this makes sense because they go exploring and they run into a bunch of rocks and they're like, what's going on? They even lift a rock and don't see anything under it. But Huey, Dewey, and Louie, they're still blowing their bubbles. One of them sticks a bubble onto the rock, which makes it mad enough to wake up. And it's a chicken. It's a cube-shaped chicken that looks like a rock. What?
A square
Crazy.
rock chicken.
I really love the look of these square rock chickens as well. There's no reason for them to be square rock chickens, but they just are, and it's great. I love it.
It's really good art
so
for
they
1948 comics. It's kids'
It
comics.
It does. It looks beautiful.
He's doing way more than he needs to do. Like, honestly.
Yeah, like there's background jokes, like constantly, like stuff's constantly being written on like books and like little things all in the background. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, there's a good gag when Huey, Dewey, and Louie are looking for food to make those omelets, and in the background behind them, it's just bags that are labeled corn, more corn, corn 2.
So they go back to the village with all of their chickens, and they're like, "Hey, how'd you find those birds?" And Huey, Dewey, and Louie show them with their bubbles, and round bubbles. Oh my god, this is sacrilege! It's somebody literally shouts out sacrilege because they are a cube society. They do not believe in round shit at all. And so Huey, Dewey, and Louie are in trouble.
They're put on death
and
row,
they have
right?
five. They're put on. Well, originally it's like
They would
usually
be.
you'd be put on death row, but since you're cool and everything, you brought us these chickens. We'll postpone it for 5 days, unless you can blow square bubbles. And so for 5 days, they're trying to blow square bubbles. Finally, the day comes, and they blow bubbles, and they're square. What? How'd you do that? Well, they hid the chickens under their shirts, and the chickens blew square bubbles for them. Which, I have a whole load of problems with. Can chickens chew gum?
Yeah. If ducks can chew gum, chickens can chew gum.
Okay, that makes sense. Again, that makes sense. Who am I to argue with this logic?
I don't know how to blow a gum bubble though, so I don't know.
You don't?
No, I don't know how to ride a bike either though. But I don't know if you could teach a chicken to blow a bubblegum bubble in 5 days.
Kia, if we could take a sidebar and just wander over a few steps away. Are we on this podcast with a 7-year-old?
I think so. I don't know how.
I can tie my shoes.
Vince, the men are talking. We need to, he's never going to get married. He's never going to have kids if we can't find a way to, teach him at least how to blow a bubble. How's he going to, impress
Actually, that's more impressive that I procreated and will not be able to even pass on simple basic skills to my child.
Is your son going to teach you?
I forgot he is married. He does have a kid. Oh, shit.
That kid
is your son going to have to teach you? He's going to pick it up from some other kid?
Oh, man, he's going to be like Forrest Gump Jr.
And he's going to be forced to read all of Vince's old Donald Duck comics. The kids are going to think he's a goddamn nerd. Oh, no. Oh, no.
I was trying to explain Bruce. I was trying to explain the concept of recording tonight to Bruce. And I was like, yeah, I read comics about Donald Duck, and I'm going to go talk about it with Mr. Kia and Mr. Chris. And he's like, why would you talk about Donald Duck without me? Is what he said.
He's got a good point.
Yeah, that is a good point. So anyways, they're free to go. The ducks have blown their bubble magically, and they are still trying to find a way out of there and back home. And they find a gift that original explorer gave them when he came forever ago, and it is a compass. And they realize, hey, okay, cool, let's. They need something in exchange if they're going to take the compass. So they teach the villagers square dancing, which is a great combo with their southern accent.
Great joke.
Then they make their way back home, and they bring 2 chickens with them, and the scientific community is in awe. They're like, oh, what is this? Well, here, I know what we'll do. We'll breed them. We'll make a race of super poultry. This will be great.
And I was thinking, man, they probably got 2 girls, and they're going to die out, and it's going to be so sad. That's what I was thinking the whole time.
Really?
Yeah, I actually was thinking that.
They say, look, one's going to crow. And then they both crowed, and all the scientists are sad, and it's the most humiliating experience of Donald Duck's life. But on their way home, they find a diner. They're like, you know what? Let's adventure's over. Let's go in and have a good old meal. And these last 2 panels of the book. By the way, they get home. This whole the scientists, this is all on the last page. But my favorite 2 panels here. What'll it be, gents? Ham and eggs, cheese omelet, roast chicken. And then the next panel is just a cop car. Calling all cars, angry duck wrecking dining car at 6th and D streets. That is all. And that's how the story ends. Beautiful.
I love
beautiful way to end it.
It's beautiful. I love throughout the story, Donald's like, I will start a war if I don't get what I want. He says that multiple times. And this is only 3 years after World War II ended. He's serious, I will start a war.
Did he really say, I will start a war?
He says it twice.
So weird. That is very weird. Oh my god.
It's his famous catchphrase.
He's a very antagonistic kind of guy. That is. I just never knew what it meant. Oh, interesting. But yeah, great story. Well loved for a reason. Just so much fun. So many fun running gags. The whole style of this thing is just quick and fun. And I don't. Did you guys have a chance to read some of the other stories that are in this collection? Mm-hmm. You did not. Mm-hmm. That's okay, Vince. Chris, you did. I read a few of them as well. What'd you read, Chris?
Well, I've read all of the Lost in the Andes trade. So quiz me.
Whoa. Well, speaking of quizzes, I only read 4 others. There's that castle one that you were talking about.
Which is maybe my favorite. It's if you like DuckTales, it's all there, except the Beagle Boys.
There was the fun thing about it is all these stories are fairly different in length. The castle one that you were talking about and this one, Lost in the Andes, both about 32 pages. I read a couple of them that were 10 pages because I wanted to read some of the shorter ones just to kind of see how they flowed. There was one about a crazy quiz show where Donald Duck really wants to win money on a quiz show, and so they just decide to fuck with him. I really love it. And they really, really fuck with him by also asking Huey and Dewey and Louie super easy questions, and then giving them prizes even when they fuck up. It's beautiful.
I like it too because this is before America knew that quiz shows were rigged. This is just a funny gag.
That's true.
Because Donald studies up and he knows all this stuff, and then they ask him a question that's just impossible, and he's just like, "What?" They're like, "What is Mickey Mouse's social security number?"
that was my favorite question.
Was that There's also another question? Really?
That's what they ask him in the game show. He's like, "I don't know."
So canonically, Mickey Mouse pays into Social Security.
Of course, man. He's got to do his part.
Shit.
Yeah.
These are things I don't think about when I watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse with Bruce. Okay.
I mean, he's got to make a living just like the rest of us, right? We had another one I read that I really liked was Rocket Race to the Moon, where they are being tasked to. There's some competition to whoever can race to the moon and back wins like $100,000, which is crazy in 1948. But you know what? The Americans and the Russians did it.
15 years later, they went to the moon somehow.
The Americans have to find a pilot who's light enough, and that won't be missed in case there's not enough gas to get home. And Donald Duck is selling newspapers out on the street, and he's really annoying. So they shove him in there. But Huey, Dewey, and Louie stow away, and so there's definitely not enough gas, and they're all stuck on the moon fighting aliens. So it's a fun little comic. Of course, they make their way home. Don't worry, they're all right.
I should correct myself. 20 years until a human went to the moon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, ducks.
But ducks went to the moon. First.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of them in there. Crazy scenarios. There's a Christmas one where they defeat an evil witch. There's all sorts of monsters. It's
the evil witch one is not the best, but it does have one of my favorite gags, which I will describe to the listeners who maybe haven't seen it, where the witch has kidnapped Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and Donald is trying to break into her house, and so she conjures. He's got like a big a battering ram, so she conjures a newspaper machine.
Yeah, it grinds up the battering ram and makes it a printing press.
And makes a printing press, which prints the headline, Home Invader Foiled.
Yeah. It's a great little joke. And once Donald, that's because, never mind. We're going into detail into that story. We don't need to. It's a great one. They're all fun. Read more Donald Duck comics, people. They're wholesome. They're good family fun. You can read them with anybody. Nobody will hate them. I guarantee that. Now I want to read more old Uncle Scrooge comics too, because these things are fun. And let's just watch some DuckTales. Yeah, but not the new one, not the new remake.
No, maybe good. I think the new remake's actually gonna be pretty good.
Let's give it a chance.
I'm gonna give it a chance. I'm sure it'll have some good writers and stuff on there. It seems like they're throwing a lot of money on it, so I can't wait.
I feel like Disney and modern cartoon makers are hiring the right people and respecting the IP enough. With other things, like most revivals aren't shitty anymore. They're actually pretty good. That being said, I haven't watched the Cartoon Network's Bugs Bunny Wabbit or anything, but I like the voice talent with David Tennant as Uncle Scrooge. I believe he's the first dude to voice Uncle Scrooge except for Alan Young, isn't he?
Yeah,
which is crazy. But Bobby Moynihan's in it, which is a weird choice, but just right for playing one of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Guys, I can't tell them apart, by the way. Can you tell Huey, Dewey, and Louie apart?
Nope, never.
Okay.
Not in this at all. In the 90s sequel Quack Pack, I could tell them apart.
Shit, you
I
watched
never
Quack
watched
Pack?
Quack Pack at all.
That's when they were like cool 15-year-old ducks, right?
Yeah, they were teenagers, so they had slightly more distinct personalities. I remember very little about that show, but I remember at the time could tell.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not watching that. That sounds terrible.
I think, Dewey is the blue one, and he was more the JTT, sarcastic one of that show. And Louie, the green one, I'm just pulling this out of my ass here. He was the sporty one, and Huey, as the red one, was kind of the leader. That sounds right.
I mean, it kind of sounds like Huey, Dewey, and Louie were just prototypes for Home Improvement. Donald Duck was Tim Allen. Yeah, exactly. Right?
Tim the Toolman Taylor is Donald Duck. This checks out, guys.
This all works. This all makes perfect sense. You cannot argue with it. It's perfect logic. And Launchpad is, of course, Al Borland.
I don't think so, Uncle Scrooge.
Yep. And then he hosted the Family Feud before someone else took over. All right.
Wow.
Mr.
Launchpad would have been a great host for Family Feud.
Launchpad I hope they relaunch Family Feud after Steve Harvey leaves with Launchpad McQuack. I think that'd be a good career move for him. Yeah. So I think that about the book. You know,
that's a real robot chicken joke there, but I like it.
Thank you. We've been really loving this thing. I kind of want to challenge us. Is there anything about this story that you didn't like? We've been sort of raving about it. Anything you didn't like? Vince, I'll go to you first.
I mean, I liked it well enough. I don't think it's like the greatest comic in the world. Like it's incredibly pleasant, and I will be reading more of these with Bruce. But and it's like better than like the comics I read in Disney Adventures. But like, I think I was expecting like the greatest comic in the world, and I got like a good comic. So
yeah.
You know,
That's
maybe
fair.
this was built up too much in my head.
Right.
Chris, you?
I don't know. The only thing is, if you're a woke 2017-year-old liberal media Twitter personality, it's a little insensitive sometimes. Especially, we didn't recommend it in this group, but in the Lost in the Andes collection is Voodoo Hoodoo.
Oh no.
Which it gets a little bit into, kind of Caribbean voodoo practices, and there's some very stereotypical bones through their noses people, and you're like, I don't like that so much.
Yeah, James Bond is really good at that too.
But we don't really see that here. I think that because they're so bizarre, the square people in this you're not like offended in any way, because you're like, what?
Yeah, and even like the Southern accent thing is like, it's more of like wouldn't it be silly if these people who lived in Peru spoke with American Southern accents? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it could easily like tread into like, we're making fun of things, and I'm like, but you're not. You're just like,
but it's not.
hilarious?
It's just having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If I had to pick anything, it's just that they are for kids. It's, you can only read so many of them in a row before you're like, all right, this is just starting to get to be a little bit too much of silly fun. But it's fun to read one or two and put it down after a little while and kind of come back to it, I think.
Right. It's frustrating because you're like, shoot some heroin, Donald. Come on. Address adult themes for me.
Oh God, there's one point where they find a dead body. In the one you mentioned in the Old Castle Secret, they find a dead body, Donald and Uncle Scrooge, and they go back and tell the kids, and it's just like the next panel is a thing like, after a long conversation, like the kids just look sad sitting in the corner, and everyone else is trying to plan their next move, and I was like, oh, you just passed over the adult stuff, but you're like, okay, you acknowledge that it happened. That's pretty cool. I like that.
That's
I'd like to
weird
see
one.
somebody do like a spin-off comic where they just like 24 pages on that conversation of Donald Duck telling the kids that he found a dead body and what that means.
Also, I don't know. I think it's just a credit to Carl Barks' art, but he makes the like in that quiz show or in the Witch one or in any of these, like these characters just seem so sinister. You're just like, holy crap! Like it's just kind of like how Pinocchio is like built to frighten children.
Yeah,
There's something
That shit,
really
I
like
did not smoke or drink cigars or what? Yeah, whatever. Like because I turned into a donkey. That shit scared the fuck out of me.
there's something very unsettling about like the villains in some of these stories where you're just like that's scary. Like it's weird to me. I like it though. I do like that aspect.
Well, it's also worth noting. I don't think we mentioned it, but Carl Barks ended up becoming like a director for a lot of the Disney cartoons starring Donald Duck as well, which makes sense because like that thing, like he is so expressive. Like Donald Duck, how many times can you draw an angry duck and just not make it look the same over and over again? Like there's always a very specific look to his anger or to anyone else's facial expressions. Like the kid's sadness, it works so well. I love it. But enough gushing over it. I think we're about done. Seems pretty clear we all liked it. I hope you check it out because man, it's really good. But next time we're jumping to much more serious comics. We are going to talk about some Black Panther. Not because there's a movie coming out or anything, but just about time to talk about some Black Panther. We are going to be reading the run by Christopher Priest, kind of what a lot of people call the big one that kind of made him a more serious player in the Marvel Universe. But this is from 2001. We're going to do the first story arc there. It's the first, 1998. Thank you. From 1998, the first story arc, which was the first 6 issues. It's recently been reprinted in like a giant collection, like the first 30 issues of Christopher Priest's run. You can maybe find the older volumes out there that are just the first 6, but it's also online and everything.
It's also on Unlimited.
The Client is what that story arc is called. But yeah, by Christopher Priest. Art, I think, by Mark Texeira. Is that right? I think so. We'll talk about it more.
The covers at least.
Yeah, and also introduces the character of Everett Ross, who was played by Martin Freeman in the Avengers movie, or in the Captain America movie recently, Civil War. And I'm sure he'll be coming back in the Black Panther movie as well. So we'll have to wait and see that. But join us next time. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
until
really
then,
excited.
you guys have
I
anything?
think it's one of those comics that I've never read, but I've always heard good things. And I think, Chris, when you were over at my place maybe about a year ago, you were reading it. I was like, oh, like I really need to read this Black Panther comics. And the Black Panther movie is so far away, I figured like I just want to read some Black Panther now and not wait for the movie to come out a year and a half from now.
Mm-hmm. That's a good excuse. So that's what we're going to do. But yeah, I think that's it. You guys, I think we're good to sign off. You guys have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm good. Woohoo.
Nope. Great. Woohoo. We love you. Thank you so much for listening. Vince, Chris, I love you. We'll join you. We hope you will join us next time. Bye.